Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 series, Can We Save the Oakland A's? And we will start off this episode with a quick programming note just to keep the loyal viewers of our channel up with what's going on. I will be traveling for work the rest of this week, so you are unlikely to hear from me again until late on Friday, March 7th, or perhaps not even until the weekend. But we will be back, barring something very strange happening while I'm traveling. And we'll continue on with the season then. In this episode, the focus is to get through the All-Star break and get through the trade deadline. Our Oakland A's having a very good season at 61-30, 11.5 up on the Texas Rangers in the division, even though we've been bad thus far in the month of July with a 3-6 record so far. Hopefully we'll get that turned around very shortly. We completed the first-year player draft in our last episode, and thanks as always to every member of the Worldwide Scouting Department. Appreciate all the feedback and then the analysis of what we ended up doing in the draft. I think it worked out very well, but obviously we won't know for sure until several seasons into the future. Near term, as I mentioned, over the next 20 days or so until the trade deadline, we're going to see if perhaps we can find someone to help us in center field. It's really our biggest issue right now. Over the near term, we've solved the problem, at least offensively, by moving Darnell Selvey into the role, although he's not a natural center fielder. Juan Ramirez moves from DH to left field, and the youngster Nelson Romero, who's been starting only against left-handed pitchers for us this year, moves into a DH role and bats ninth against right-handed pitching for us now. So more playing time for Ramiro. We'll see how that goes going forward. Recently made a trade to reunite with Jonathan Shearer, which should help our bullpen. Still missing three key left-handed pitchers, the starter Macho Rangel and the relievers Savion Keys and Roque de la Paz. Hope that we'll have Rangel back late August or around the time for September roster expansion. Keys and De La Paz, we are desperately hoping we may have one of those guys available come playoff time, but it's pretty unlikely. That being said, still like our pitching a lot, and with the addition of Shearer, think that we're unlikely to go crazy bringing on a starting pitcher this year, but someone who could perhaps do what Bobby Armstrong has not done for us over the 4 years he's been in Oakland and absolutely take over that center field position for us is what we're looking for. It doesn't seem like on the trade market there's anyone who really solves that problem for us, and even when casting our net a bit wider and looking at all of the center fielders in baseball, to get an impact player, the price is just prohibitive at this point. So I tend to think for the near term, we're obviously going to go with the pivot that we made to give Selvey the playing time in center against right-handed pitching, and still let the right-handed hitting Armstrong play center field for us against left-handed pitching. And we've got a few guys in the minors that we could potentially look to bring up over the next 6-7 weeks as we get closer to September roster expansion who might help. Doesn't mean we're not going to continue to peruse the trade market, but at this point I'm not particularly optimistic that we're going to find a difference maker at center field from another team. I think the answer for this year is going to need to come internally, whether it's giving Armstrong another chance, keeping Selvey out there, or perhaps bringing up one of our youngsters. I mentioned we've had a rough month of July so far with a 3-6 record. Actually started 1-6 before winning our last two to take 2 out of 3 at home against the Giants. We've got 6 games now till the All-Star break, 3 against the division rival Astros at home, and then back in the Bay Area for the final 3 before the All-Star break at the Giants. And then we've got a nice long stretch at home, actually, because we're really at home for 3 weeks right now. Actually, it's an insane schedule when we look at it, closing in on 4 weeks because we were home against San Francisco. We'll be home against Houston, at San Francisco for 3 games, then the All-Star break, and then our next 10 games to close out the month of July are all at home. So even with this 3-6 start to the month, with the amount of home cooking we've got in front of us, we hope that we come out of this month of July with a winning record. And who knows, maybe a new center fielder when all is said and done. And we have been playing better, taken 3 out of 4 games since we checked in, 2 out of 3 against Houston, and we just won the first game of the final 3 in San Francisco before the All-Star game today. Another pitching injury, but hopefully not something that's going to matter. Mike Blumenshine with a sore elbow went 36 pitches today. But obviously with just 2 games left until the All-Star break, he doesn't need to pitch these next couple of days. Everyone will get 3 or 4 days off around the All-Star break. Well, I guess not all of our starting pitchers. It's conceivable that a starting pitcher or 2 could end up on the All-Star team. But Blumenshine unlikely to be pitching one of those first couple of games out of the All-Star break. So hopefully he will get the time he needs to get healthy while we're all taking a little bit of a break. And we did end up taking 2 out of 3 in San Francisco, although similar to the Houston series, we lost the final game of the series as we were going for the sweep. So as we sit here heading into the All-Star break, 65-32 record, 11 games up on the Rangers in the division, and continuing to battle with the Dodgers and the Red Sox for the best record in baseball. We are a game and a half up on the Red Sox, while the Dodgers are 3 games behind us in the battle for the best record in the major leagues. As we get ready for the All-Star break, Luis Godina leading the league in hitting. Darnell Selvey, now our center fielder, at least against right-handed pitching, 3rd in the league in ribbies. Godina is 3rd in the league in OPS. Pitching-wise, 3-time defending Cy Young Award winner Federico Arriola leading the league with 131 strikeouts this year. And before we find out how many Oakland A's are on the All-Star team this year, take a quick look at the trade block. Pitching-wise, still looks like with the recent acquisition of Shearer, we got the most impactful bullpen arm on the market, and don't really see a starting pitcher that's going to make a significant difference for our team. So unless something changes over the next 13 days, I think it's unlikely we're going to be real active in the pitching market. Hitter-wise, there's definitely a few more interesting players out there, but still don't know if there's the impact center fielder that we're looking for. Could always try to reunite with our old friend Sergio Palomares, but honestly, we moved on from him several years ago. I think right about the time that we gave up on him being the answer at a similar stage in his career to where we are with Bobby Armstrong at this point. Certainly could give us some speed and stabilize things defensively, but Palomares continues to frustrate as a major league hitter with just a 50 WRC plus this year, although he remains good at stealing bases. Ernesto Farfan, another center fielder who's out there, like the defense very much, but the bat is not an impact bat, even though he has put up a 122 WRC plus this year. When we look at what he's done over the course of his major league career, he's been exactly a league average offensive player. Don't necessarily think he's a huge upgrade from what we've got going on there right now. CJ McLaughlin, he could help. The issue is that he's very expensive to bring on board and he's wrecked physically. So I just don't know if that's the right path for us to go with the former number one overall pick in the draft in 2030. And you can see he has had a nice career with the Giants. Was a rookie of the year a decade ago and a six-time All-Star, a couple of Silver Sluggers, and a world champion in 2041. So he's had a nice career at the major league level, put up a pretty strong 133 WRC plus. But you can see he hasn't gotten to that figure in the last 5 years. So definitely he's gotten into his late 20s and early 30s, has become a less productive offensive player, although still an above average offensive player. But just with him being wrecked physically and the massive salary that he's due to be paid, think it would be tough to bring him on board. He might also not even be willing to join us. Yeah, still exercising his 10-5 rights. I believe the last time we checked in a couple weeks ago in game time, that was what he was doing then. And then there's still the franchise, Jake Ortega, out there dealing with a couple of injuries, quad strain with an unknown return, and a strained ab that's going to keep him out another 3 to 4 weeks. He's wrecked physically, no longer a very good defensive center fielder, is a guy who won a gold glove for us in center field back in 2036. He's been productive when he's been in the lineup this year. The issue is that he only has 85 at-bats at the major league level, and it looks like he's at least a month away from a return. If we tried to trade for him, and we would need our friends in Milwaukee to keep a big chunk of his contract to make it work, you can see we still have to give up one of the better players on our team or one of the more highly regarded prospects in our organization to get a one-for-one deal done. And given Ortega's defensive limitations at this point, I guess defensive limitations isn't fair because he's a more than competent left or right fielder. But the fact that you don't want to play him defensively because he's probably going to get hurt if he has to run around in the outfield. And we don't really need a DH, and he's expensive. As much as I'd love to have a reunion with the franchise, I don't think it's going to happen this year. And our old buddy Chase Dora, who was our number 2 starter for several years, his season has come to an end with the Dodgers. Looks like he's working out of the bullpen for LA at this point. 5-0 record with a save this year, but his season is now over with a torn back muscle. Take a look at the All-Star Prospects game roster, and as has become a very frequent trend, a lot of Oakland pitchers on the team. Starting pitcher Edgar Alarcón, recently promoted to high A from A-ball, 3-3 with a 4.46 ERA at the higher level after he was dominant in A-ball. He makes the team. Josh Keel, recently promoted him to A-ball. This is a guy who we picked in the 9th round of the draft back in 2042 as the rookie ball roster got a little more filled following the draft. Decided to promote him up to A-ball at 19 years old, and he's been having a great season with no runs allowed in A-ball and a 0.84 ERA in rookie ball before he got promoted. Mike Mercer, more highly regarded prospect, former first-round pick in 2041 with a supplemental pick. Split this season so far between high A, where he was 5-2 with a 3.66 ERA, and double A, where he's 0-4 with a 5.30 ERA. But Mercer still looks like he could be a very interesting reliever for us down the line. Unfortunately, does not seem like there's a real good chance of that stamina developing and letting him become a starter for us. But 3 Oakland pitchers in the prospects game this year, And we've also got a position player, name that you may remember from a couple of years ago. Gabe Kimball was our first round pick in 2041. It's been slow going in terms of his development, but he's now progressed to be the number 18 prospect in baseball. Started this year in A-ball where he hit 279, but did have 18 homers and 41 ribbies in just 68 games. We promoted him up to high A-ball a few weeks ago. He is struggling at the higher level right now, hitting just a $170, but relatively small sample size, just 47 at-bats. Still think he could be a solid glove with a potentially interesting bat if he continues to develop, and good to see him get some recognition as he continues to try to move along in his development. Now to the actual All-Star game, and a couple of Oakland A's pitchers on the All-Star team this year. The least surprising, Joe Heilman, last year's Mariano Rivera Award winner, 2-1 record with 25 saves this year. The ERA has bloated to 1.54. You may remember he had a 0 ERA in the first couple months of this season, so he has started giving up a few runs, but still has put up a 1.8 WAR for us this year and is certainly a deserving All-Star again. And Wilson Rangel, the left-handed reliever, 2.50 ERA for us this year, a 7-4 record, 26 shutdowns to just 5 meltdowns in the 40 games that he's pitched. And nice to see Rangel recognized as a first-time All-Star at the age of 26. Turning to our position players, and no shock that we're going to have a lot of representation there. Catcher Jonah Richards, batting average has fallen to 281 this year. Still has 17 homers, 60 ribbies, and a 146 WRC plus with a 3.7 WAR. Richards, of course, was the 2041 Rookie of the Year and then won the MVP for us in 2042. Already talked a little bit recently about Luis Godina leading the American League with a 336 average as he tries to pursue his second batting title in the past 3 years. 162 WRC plus on the season. Pretty much does everything. 17 doubles, 6 triples, 13 home runs, and he's 15 out of 15 stealing bases this year. Third baseman Juan Pimentel, another All-Star appearance for him. The Rookie of the Year in 2039 was your 2040 AL MVP. He did the same thing as Richards, won a Rookie of the Year, and then followed it up with an MVP award the next season. And he's also your defending American League Most Valuable Player, having another big year, 294 average, 19 homers, and 68 ribbies. Also his 21 doubles, 8 triples, 22 stolen bases, 3.4 WAR on the season. We've got a lot of very good players on this team, as you can tell, which is why we are trying to pursue a third consecutive World Series championship. And another All-Star in the infield, Chisin Iwata, All-Star for the third time, hitting 298 this year, 13 homers, 36 ribbies, although he has scored almost 70 runs, 141 WRC plus for the shortstop. Definitely could be his last season with us, so good to see a little bit of recognition there for him. We've talked a lot about the fact that Godina and Iwata, who are both All-Stars this year, could be in their final seasons with us, given that they're both set to make over $20 million this coming season, or next season more accurately, in arbitration, and we are extremely salary constrained. And the third person who fits that criteria, Darnell Selvey, also an All-Star this year. Selvey, as we talked about, third in the league with 78 ribbies, 290 average. Another guy who does everything, 22 doubles, 15 steals, 137 WRC plus. And as we talked about, he's been playing center field for us most recently. So interesting that Selvey, Iwata, and Godina are all All-Stars this year in what for at least one of them is likely to be their final year in Oakland. You can see, as I mentioned, they're all set to make over $20 million next year in their final arbitration eligible seasons. And at this point, with those plugs in there, our payroll is almost $196 million, which, given that our entire budget is only $198 million, will potentially be very problematic. But we will focus on figuring that out in the off season. In the meantime, pretty pleased to see some very strong representation for our Oakland Athletics in this All-Star game. And we're going to continue perusing the trade market and see if maybe there's something we can do to bolster this roster further. And as we're coming out of the All-Star break, Pimentel was named the All-Star Game MVP, 2 for 3 in a 9-0 American League victory. Our former catcher, Jorge Mendoza, going to have surgery in Minneapolis, out with a torn quad for 2 to 3 months. So although he's still a solid player when he's healthy, hasn't been very healthy this year, hitting just .210 and 224 at-bats, and going to be out for even longer than originally anticipated. And Pimentel continued his hot play from the All-Star game, was just named the American League Player of the Week, hit .438 with a couple of homers and 5 ribbies in action. And not surprisingly, with that good performance, we swept our 3 games against the Angels coming out of the All-Star break. So a week now until the trade deadline. As we sit here on the 25th of July, we've got a 12-game lead in the division, won 3 in a row, and at 68-32, we have pushed our lead on the Red Sox for the best record in baseball up to 3.5 games. And as we sit here a week before the trade deadline, figured we would check in on how things are going. Nelson Ramiro getting the additional playing time that we talked about, now being in the lineup against right-handed pitching. Still having a real productive rookie year with a 124 WRC+. Juan Ramirez continues to have, by his standards, quite an off year. 93 WRC+, below replacement level overall. Does have 13 homers and 52 ribbies, given his track record. Probably going to continue to give him at-bats, particularly against right-handed pitching. Looking at what he's done in left field, though, zone rating and defensive efficiency, both below average. In the case of the defensive efficiency, well below average. And Darnell Selvey has been respectable for us in center field, slightly below average in terms of his zone rating and defensive efficiency. Not a perfect answer, but he also hasn't been a total disaster by any stretch. So unless something changes materially in terms of who's on the market or the prices for players who aren't on the market, I tend to think it may be a relatively quiet trade deadline for us here in Oakland. And we split 4 games in Cleveland, or more accurately against Cleveland, since we were at home. 3 left against Houston to finish off this month, and then finally we'll be headed on to the road in the month of August after this very long time when most of our players have been in the Bay Area. Looking at the standings with 3 games left until the trade deadline, a 13-game lead over the Rangers in the division, and we are still 3.5 up on the Red Sox for the best record in both baseball and the American League. And we got to check in on the franchise one final time. Down to only 1 injury, still out for another 1 to 2 weeks most likely with that strained ab. If we want them to keep all of his contract, we have to add a extremely good major league player to rent the franchise for the final month or 2 of the season. And if we don't want them to retain any of his contract at all, we've got to give up one of the very highly paid players that will likely be moving on from at least one of this offseason to make the salaries work out. But given that Godina, Iwata, and Selvey are all strongly contributing all-stars who are much younger and healthier than Mr. Ortega, trading any of them to rent him doesn't seem like a good move. And even if we get to a more midway point in terms of the salary retention, he can see we've got to give up someone real good to rent Jake Ortega. Just does not make sense for a guy that we'd really only want to play in right field. And although he's wrecked physically, we did check in one final time on C.J. McLaughlin, who I think could certainly help us if he stayed healthy, but he is still exercising his 10-5 rights and not even willing to move just a few miles from San Francisco to Oakland to join the best team in baseball. So my hunch is he's probably unlikely to waive that no-trade clause to go anywhere. And we've won a couple of games against Houston, scored 17 runs back-to-back days, the final game of the series against Cleveland with a 17-3 win and a football score, and then a 17-1 win in the first game against Houston, beat them in a much closer contest, 7-6 yesterday. So we are at trade deadline day. Don't think there's going to be anything compelling to do, but we're going to take one final look and see if there's anything in the cards to try to increase our chances of setting this team up for the elusive three-peat. Something that I believe has been done only once in baseball since the A's did it back in 72-74. I think the only other three-peat since then was, of course, the mighty New York Yankees from 1998 to 2000. And it's always worth checking in to see if maybe there's some unexpected opportunity as the trade deadline approaches. And there is one this year, not a position player. The list there is pretty similar. Some guys just don't want to come join us. The rest of them are guys that I don't think would be impactful enough given how much it would take to bring them on board. But our old friend, the knuckleballer Andres Rojas, added to the trade block very recently by the New York Mets. You may remember Rojas out of the University of Connecticut, Avery Point, a guy that we looked at back in the 2027 draft. We were very tempted by the knuckleballer. We ended up going in a different direction with our first-round pick. We're hoping he was going to fall to us to our second-round pick. I believe we missed out on him by just a handful of picks, I believe. And Rojas has gone on to have an outstanding career. The 10-time All-Star, was the NL Cy Young Award winner back in 2031. Still presents a very strong pitching profile. Still has that outstanding knuckleball to mix in with several other pitches. Well above average stuff, movement and control. 8-5 with a 3.84 earned run average for the Mets this season. Even though he's 37 years old, still normal in terms of his injury proneness. Making a lot of money at $33.5 million in the final year of his contract, but certainly would be a wonderful addition to our team. Is a third or fourth starter. Unfortunately, he doesn't want to come to Oakland. Rojas exercises his no-trade clause. The guy whose career we have been following for over 17 years of this playthrough at this point still seems unlikely to ever end up spending any time in an Oakland A's uniform. Other than that, as I noted, I don't think there is really anything to do. Looking at the batters that are out there, McLaughlin still exercising his 10-5 rights. The price for Ortega still obscene. Higbee, the price for him is obscene as well, and he'd be a lovely addition to the team, but he's making $56 million, and we don't have a lot of flexibility. We need them to keep most of that contract, and there's just not a realistic path to bring him on board. So I think as we sit here on July 31st, the only trade we're going to have made this year is the reunion with Jonathan Shearer, and he hasn't been great for us. 4.91 ERA over his first 7 1/3 innings. Has struck out 10 and been above replacement level. Still think with his profile he'll ultimately be very effective for us, but the veteran reliever is going to be the only acquisition we make in this year's in-season trading. And we ended up sweeping the series against Houston yesterday as we moved to August 1st. Luis Godina leading the league in hitting, and his .517 average this past week certainly helped extend his lead in the batting race and got him AL Player of the Week honors. Obviously, our A's remain atop the power rankings, so with 2 months left in the season, we've extended our lead in the division to 15 games over the Rangers, and our lead over the Red Sox for the best record in baseball is 4.5. As we noted, Godina leading the league in hitting. Darnell Selvey still third in ribbies, although he's got a hyperextended knee right now. Godina third in the league in OPS, and Federico Arriola continues to lead the league in strikeouts. Arriola, as we mentioned earlier, has won 3 consecutive Cy Young Awards. Before he started that streak, Steve Jenas of the Rangers won 7 in a row, and Jenas 9-5 this year with a 3.54 ERA, tied for second in the league in strikeouts and leading the league in pitcher WAR, as Jenas perhaps going to make a case to win a 8th Cy Young Award before this season is over. And before we finish things off, take a quick look at our team statistics. After that 3-6 start in July, did end the month 15-10, so 12-4 after that slow start. Our 73-34 record, a game above expectations, rank first in the American League in runs scored, and you can see we are first in almost every offensive category, the exceptions being homers, where we're third, and walks, where we're second. First in steals, fourth in base running. Our defense this year is actually pretty middling, ranking 9th in both defensive efficiency and zone rating. And the pitching for us is poor, third in the American League in runs allowed. We have led the American League in runs allowed for several years in a row now. I don't know how many, but it's a lot. But still a very good pitching staff. Generally in the top 3 or 4 in most pitching categories, and even the categories where we're struggling, like BABIP and home runs allowed, we're middle of the pack. So certainly feeling good about this team as we head into the final 2 months of the season. Maybe we'll use the injury to Selvey here offline between now and the next episode, which, as I mentioned, is going to be a few days away. To reconsider what we're doing in center field, check in on some of our minor leaguers, and perhaps make some changes that hopefully will ensure that this team is positioned to maintain the best record in baseball and hopefully be healthy and well come playoff time. Last thing we will do before the end of the episode is check in on the injured list. Macho Rangel looks like he could definitely begin a rehab assignment before the end of August. Hopefully he'll be back in the majors. Roque de la Paz and Savion Keys both 2 to 3 months away. So the hope is maybe we'll have one of them back for the playoffs, but certainly no guarantees. Thinking about the rest of the major league team, as I mentioned, Selvey day-to-day with a hyperextended knee. We'll probably give him time off just to be cautious. He's having a better year this season than a year ago. and want to ensure that all of these guys are healthy and well come playoff time. And given the big lead we've got in the division, doesn't seem to be any need to play anyone when they've got a lingering injury. So next time around, we will find out whether we can hold on to the best record in baseball and have this team healthy and well for the playoffs. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.